June 5th, 1919, at approximately 6:45 a.m., a terrible, terrible coal mine disaster occurred right in this spot here, right in this area. Hi everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we find ourselves in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, at the site of a horrific coal mining accident that occurred on that date on the placard there. And obviously the area has changed quite a bit since then. Now when you go online and read, you'll see a lot of references to this store here being where the old entrance is. Okay, you can kind of see the layout, and behind this Home Depot here, up on that ridge where you see those high tension lines there, that's where I'm going to go and climb up to. It's very overgrown. It's very difficult to really get up there, but I'm going to try to get into like one spot and see what we can find over there. So and I wanted to commemorate this horrific coal mine accident that happened here, right here in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Okay, so now we're on top of a level here where I think, turn the camera around. This has the layout and the look of what might have been a railway at one time. And I have to do a little bit more research to confirm that. I would think if it was, it might have been a short line that was here specifically to service the coal mine. This may have been how the anthracite was transported away from the mine. We're going to take a little walk. Now, I've been poking around a little bit before going on camera here. There's a lot of animal droppings, and there's a lot of overgrown here. I don't want to end up walking away with bugs or something, or waking up something that's hibernating in a cave or something, and turn this somewhat educational video into a survival thing. But I've had my eye on this for over a year, and I was waiting for some of the vegetation to kind of die off, which it has. Perhaps maybe if I waited another month, it would have been a more ideal time to try to get up here. But I'm going to get to a point, and I'm going to read some information I have. Now, I'm going to say this before while I'm walking and trying to get myself to a point where I can talk. I'm up on a little mound right here. To the best of my knowledge, I don't have any family that were ever coal miners. Now, that doesn't mean they weren't. I just don't know of any. But oh, looks like someone has a little hangout set up back here. But I will say that I have the utmost respect for the hard work and the culture that a lot of these coal miners and their families had to deal with. And I've done a lot of reading about it. I've watched a lot of videos on it. I know some people whose, fathers worked in coal mines, and, we'll talk about the company towns and some of that kind of stuff in just a moment. But, and the script that I have here that I printed offline, it is a little repetitious. Some of the information gets repeated a little bit, so forgive me for that. But this was the best description. You can read a lot of stories about this. There were people here when that blue plaque was put up that their families, they had ancestors that had died in that coal mine disaster or survived it. Only a very small portion of the men that were in there that day survived. I think less than 10. But I am going to go ahead and do some reading. Sorry if some of it sounds repetitious. I'm going to do some reading and try to walk a little bit all at the same time. So, okay, the Baltimore mine tunnel disaster was an explosion that occurred at approximately 6:45 a.m. June 5th, 1919, just inside the mouth of the Baltimore Tunnel number 2. There were 450 workers located in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, about a mile from the center of the main city out here. That's pretty much where we're at. We're like a mile outside of like the main part of Wilkes-Barre. The corner of North Sherman and Spring Street. So that is pretty much where that sign is that I showed you earlier, that we were visiting at. So what happened was, the coal cars back then, the coal car was the main way into that coal mine. The men would assemble in the morning at the start of the business day, or their work day, however you want to put it, and would get into a car, a coal car, and then go down into the mine and start their work. Very shortly after they made their trip down into the mine is when the explosion occurred. And there's been a lot, there was investigations, and they were trying to figure out exactly what happened. And I believe, from everything I've read, they have never come to like a full conclusion as to what happened. There was only speculation as to what might have occurred. 92 miners were killed and 44 injured in the explosion. Only 7 miners, yes, under 10, escaped without any injury. They believe that a arcing wire, a tobacco pipe, or an oil lamp. Back then, the coal miners utilized an oil lamp for their way of, on their helmets, to be able to see while working in the mine. That was their main source of light. They didn't have batteries, and I mean, they had batteries, but they didn't, you know, in 1919, if there were batteries, they weren't sophisticated like they are today, where you know, you have batteries that say they last 24 hours or anything like that. The Baltimore Tunnel, where we were just at, they're blaming the blasting powder. And after this disaster, the state of Pennsylvania put extra regulations in place to try to prevent these types of accidents from happening again. This was a very difficult time, because back then these people lived in what was called company towns. Now, I don't know if Wilkes-Barre was considered a company town, but what we mean by that is the coal mines would own the houses, own the supermarkets, and owned your place of employment. And none of these workers that were killed were made, their families were not made whole. Those were over 90 families that were displaced. Not to mention, when the coal mine closed, how many workers were sent home permanently with no jobs ever. But their story kind of doesn't end there. They don't get compensated by Baltimore Hudson Coal Company. The coal mine shuts down, and they have no income. Back then, there was no unemployment. I'm sure that most of these miners, being as poor as they were, had no life insurance. So unfortunately, it looks like a lot of the folks that the families would have to move within like a week of something like this happening. I did notice there's a lot of little bottles up here. They're probably not old. I would think if anything like that's up here, this would be a great place to come with a metal detector where I'm at, or come up here and try to I would hope that, like, if this vegetation drops down more, like in the heart of the winter, you might be able to see more up here. But it's just really thick up here. And I actually was up here just before we went on camera, and I was trying to find like a spot, and I think maybe this was it. The other spot was not it, although it was interesting up there. It was not it. There's a purpose to this, going through the weeds. Believe me, I wanted to get close to like where you could see more of the terrain. Like I said, I don't know if there's any critters hiding up here. There very well could be. There is droppings everywhere out there. Deer, fox, and whatever else. Also, the workers across the parking lot there probably think I'm crazy. All right. And you know, it's funny. This happened so long ago, and so much of our history is forgotten about. They may not even know what happened here. As sad as that sounds. So yeah, here's some of the terrain. I would have to assume, based on what I read, it was about 200 feet in is where the explosion happened. I would have to imagine, based on where we assume the entrance was and where we're at, that that explosion would have happened very close to where we're at, where I'm standing right now. If I'm not mistaken, this is probably a piece of coal. Nice chunk of coal. I might take that with me. So, now, most of these miners got burned, obviously. The ones that did not die in the initial explosion, there were other secondary problems. Smoke inhalation, okay? Obviously, people succumbed to that. The people that were burned and actually asphyxiated because the explosion was so intense, it robbed the mine of oxygen. So a lot of the folks that were down there ended up suffocating, which is just even more terrible. But to survive that, and then have, you know, your fate be that you survive that, you're either burned or you just end up suffocating, which is really just another terrible thing. So I'm going to read here that there was a gentleman named Jacob Mills who was a track layer, who was positioned in the first car of the train in the tunnel behind the cart motor. He fled the explosion and left and crawled through the thickening smoke to the G vein, where there was good circulation of air, and he led survivors there in a rescue attempt. The majority of the folks that were injured but did not succumb to their injuries in the mine all escaped within 1 hour, but that must have been a terrible hour to have to go through that. There's also something back when we were talking about, you know, what was at fault for this. There was a gentleman named John McGrody. He was the motor man, and he was brought in front of the Pennsylvania Bureau of Mines to testify that prior to this happening, a trolley cable had fallen to the ground, and he entered the mine to fix the fallen cable and was going to order the power to be shut off, but the explosion stopped him beforehand. So that to me really, I mean, I know how flammable coal ash is and coal vapors. Many years ago, I used to do a lot of residential heating and air conditioning, and we would have houses that still had coal bins with coal in them. And I guess the folks just never had the coal taken out. They went and got a coal delivery and then converted to oil or gas. And I was working with an older guy who advised me not to turn our acetylene torches on anywhere near the coal bin because the coal dust was flammable and would actually flash off. That's not something that I would have known, but this older gentleman told me that. So if you think about that, if the dust from the coal can be flammable, then there is no doubt that any type of arcing, any kind of high voltage line that would be arcing and creating a spark would definitely have caused the explosion. And the idea that they threw in that it could have been an oil lamp from a miner or somebody lighting a tobacco pipe sort of is, to me, and like I said, I don't want to get in trouble for saying something online here and have somebody come after me, but I feel like that's a fancy way of somebody covering up for the fact that this was something that the coal mine was responsible for. They also shouldn't have had these miners. Now, one of the pieces of legislation I was talking about that got passed after this is it became against the law for miners to travel in the same cart as gunpowder. The gunpowder had to come up and down separately after this accident. So that may have saved lives if that rule had been in effect when this disaster took place. But so yeah, we talked about the causes. And talked about the power cable. I'm just trying to go make sure I'm covering as much as I can in this before we take another little walk, because I have a story to tell to go along with this. And we talked about the legislative action, so I actually remembered a lot of the stuff that was on here. Now, there's an interesting story to go along with this, and I'm going to tell on my way out of here. There was a young man named Jimmy Gillespie, and what does Mr. Gillespie have to do with any of this? Well, Mr. Gillespie was in school, and the school year was getting ready to end, and the young Gillespie had missed a day of school prior to the day before this explosion took place. Okay? Now, my apologies. Malfunction. Here we go. Mr. Gillespie had taken a day off of school the day before and needed an excusal note to come back into school. I guess even back in 1919, they were trying to, you know, crack down on us kids playing hooky and all that kind of stuff, right? So Mr. Gillespie, the elder, it was a coal miner, and he was heading to this coal mine. He must have lived in this community around here, because evidently he was, from what I read, he was walking distance from the coal mine. And you know, just you know, after 6 a.m. in the morning, the young Gillespie hears his dad leaving for work, and he knows that he needs this excusal letter for school. So he stops his dad and asks him to either write a letter or sign the letter, the excusal slip. That one little detail saved his father's life, because when he got to the coal mine, he was exactly 1 minute late to get on that cart to go down the into the coal mine that exploded. He was going to have to walk down there. Like, had the explosion not taken place, he was going to have to walk down, excuse me, I'm walking back down this hill here. He was going to have to walk down the mine, because that was the other way in. If you missed the cart, you had to walk. Well, that his son playing hooky from school and needing an excusal note, and the fact that his dad stopped to do that for him, saved his life. If he was on that cart, he would have been part of that large number of miners that didn't make it out that day. Looks like probably some other pieces of coal here. I'm taking a little chunk of coal with me for a souvenir, so I'm not going to take it. And this looks like, and, you know, somebody will probably tell me I'm wrong, because I'm not, but this looks like it might have been something that was like heated already, a piece of coal. It might be like a byproduct. And you'll see there's a lot of slate here. You're in that part of the state of Pennsylvania where you see a lot of hills with slate on them. I haven't seen any sign of a railroad up there, but I just, knowing what I know about this stuff, I seem to think that there was a railway up there. But yeah, so Mr. Young Gillespie, he saves his father's life because he didn't go to school the day before. That's a really crazy story. And I also wanted to talk about, there was another detail that I wanted to give. And I also have okay, here we go. I have it written down here. I'm going to turn the camera around and just have everybody look at some of these little details of the mine here. And we'll walk down here and just see what this looks like today. So the majority of the miners were Polish, Lithuanian, Slovak, Irish, and Russian. And I would assume all came here to the United States of America to live a better life. And you know, we talk about this is a hot button topic, you know, in today's world about, you know, workers and where they come from and how hard they work and everything. But getting back to the whole company town thing, if you were a female back then, most of them did not work. You were 100% reliant on your husband. Okay, and you know, back then people had a lot of kids. I mean, it was nothing to have 4 kids. You know, in today's world, you know, we don't see that as much, but it was nothing back then to have a large family. And when you think about all the miners that perished that day, and then you start multiplying that times each one of them having a wife, each one of them just having, let's say, an average of 3 kids, you're talking about hundreds of people that would have been put out of work or put out of a house, because if you didn't have money to pay your rent, the you know, company towns, you were gone. You know, there was no compensation. And I think a lot of the criticism that gets hurled at these coal companies, and there's a lot of different things to criticize them for, about, you know, the effects on the environment and this and that, but not just that. It's when you stop to think about the idea that, you know, you go and tell somebody that, you know, you're not liable for this accident, there's no insurance, and, you know, and you better go find another place to live. I can't think of anything that's more terrible for like a family to have to face in the time of a crisis, where, you know, you're the person that's responsible for, you know, feeding you and keeping a roof over your head's gone. And they would flat out tell these women that, you know, you either find another husband or send one of your kids into the coal mine. I mean, there were 8- and 9-year-old little boys that were working as coal breakers. And this whole coal mine thing, now the closest I've ever come to being involved with anything like this is that, being a heating and air conditioning person, a lot of our old boilers were coal fired back in the day. So to me, that was just, you know, you think about your steam engines, you think about your heat, and many other things, your electricity. This all came from coal. This all came from hard-working coal miners, and they were paid very poorly. They were treated very poorly. And thank God that over the years, there's been some more rights and some things that have been done to help them. Now, here is an area. So when you go around the corner here is back where that sign was. Now, I don't know if in this fenced-in area, if this may have been an entrance at one time to the coal mine. I mean, I'm just not sure. And I'm not about to go scrambling down in there. But I have found in a lot of my videos and things that I've watched is, if you look hard enough, you'll find if that mine is still being ventilated, there's going to be an open vent somewhere. This very well could have been the how you got into the mine, because this goes down like well below the grade of the parking lot. Like if you walk over here, okay, if you walk over there, that would take you underneath of the road here. And it's very possible that once you would go under this road, there's the ridgeway I was just walking up on. That could have also been the entrance to the coal mine. I'm just not 100% sure. And like I said, I have found a lot of stuff online, a lot of maps, but when I try to zoom in on them, you just really can't see anything. I've also driven around this town a little bit, and knowing what I know about coal mines, I know that there was always multiple entrances, and we'd have like a left entrance, you know how like they were saying in the paper there, the G vein. You know, there may have been another entrance. I'm sure it's been long since blocked off. I would, if I knew where one was at, I would go there and take some pictures, or, you know, do a short video there as part of this. But I just wanted to commemorate this. I think this is a part of our history that's very much kind of getting forgotten about, or you have a stigma today around coal because they're saying how bad coal is for the environment and everything. But just keep in mind the men and sometimes women that worked in these mines or had something to do with the coal industry, this wasn't, you know, they weren't doing anything to hurt the environment deliberately. They were just trying to make a living. And as we saw with how many European immigrants and stuff that came to this country, they came here to work in these mines, and in many cases probably ended up kind of feeling enslaved because the wages and the working conditions were so terrible. And then there was no way to take care of your family if you were injured, or unfortunately if you lost your life. So I think I'm going to cut it here. I want to thank everybody for watching, and I want to offer my respects to the families of the coal miners here, and I want to offer you know, my thoughts and respects to anybody who's done jobs like this, especially coal mining, and just say that, you know, I'm doing my part to try to keep these things alive. I know that if we go up a little further up from here, there's a town of Pittston where there was also another very, very bad mining accident where the river collapsed into the coal mine. It was terrible. Maybe someday if I get a chance to get up there, I'll try to see if there's anything I can find out up there, and maybe do a video on that one, because I believe that one and this one were two of the worst in Pennsylvania history. I could be wrong. There could be another one that I'm not thinking of. There's been many small ones where, and I don't mean to say small if only 20 or 30 people were injured, but because that's not small. But there's been mining accidents for years, but this is a standout one that was bad. And thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you like and subscribe.